Every idea that you present, every point that you make is better represented in a story. You can tell a good story, you can take your audience anywhere you want them to go. As an ESL teacher, I teach stories by using my flashcards to elicit the story elements. We begin with setting, obviously, and then we move on to the characters, and then finally the plot. But that isn't the story, that's only the situation. What turns a situation into a story is conflict. In this video, you're going to look at 3 different types of conflict. First, you have the initial conflict. Then you have the danger. And after the danger comes the emotional conflict. You need all 3. And think of any story. Think of a movie. I don't know. Let's think of a popular movie. Oh, I know. Titanic. Although here in Peru, we call it Titanic. The characters are Jack and Rose, but Joaquin and Rosita. And we're not on the Titanic, we're on a raft going across Lake Titicaca. What is the initial conflict? The initial conflict is, oh no, we hit an iceberg. There are no icebergs in Lake Titicaca, play along. But what's the danger? The danger is the ship begins to sink. That danger is what requires resolution. If they hit an iceberg, oh no, we hit an iceberg. There's no need for resolution. The danger brings that need for resolution. But we knew the story of Titanic. We knew the story of Titanic a long time ago. And for 85 years, people cared more about the ship than they cared about the people on it until we saw the movie. What was the emotional conflict? The emotional conflict was the love story between Jack and Rose. People cried not because the ship sank, they cried because Jack, DiCaprio, drowned. Me, I cried when I found out that DiCaprio turned down the role for Anakin Skywalker. Apparently he was holding out for Titanic 2, The Resurrection. By the way, a little payback on DiCaprio for turning down a key role in my favorite movie franchise. Do you know why they cast him in Titanic? Is that scene going over the dolphins. After all, he had so much practice jumping over sharks when they casted him in Growing Pains. Payback. Anyway, I'll take this to another story, a personal story of mine, and you can see the video also on this YouTube channel, of me losing my job at the bank. It starts off with me driving home after work. You don't know that I've been fired. And the breeze is in my face, I can watch the sunset, and then I hit you with, I just lost my job. That is the initial conflict. Then I start thinking to myself, what's going through my head, and I get to the fact that I just bought this car. I got another 5 years of car payments, I have no job. Now there's the danger. It's not a threat to my life, but there's consequences if I don't resolve it. But that there is not enough conflict for a story, because I lost my job. 2 weeks later, I had a new job that actually paid better. I had that car that's 5 years worth of payments, I paid it off in 4. There's the story, but the emotional conflict is driving home. I realized I had just about sold my soul to take that job. I'd given up so much of myself just to work at a bank that for this story to be complete, I need to recapture an element of myself. I need to get my mind right. I need to get out of that cubicle and on the road and start running again. And the story ends with me running the Baltimore Marathon and finishing in a football stadium named after the same bank that had fired me 5 years earlier. Once your audience comes along for that emotional ride, that triggers in them the same conflict. They want to solve it with you. And once you take them there, you can take them anywhere you want to go next. Whether it's about how to recapture the true essence of who you are, or about training to run a marathon, or even driving directions to Baltimore. Whatever it is, you need those 3 levels of conflict so they not only feel an urgency to solve the problem, but the emotional connection to solve it with you. Look at any book or movie or any story you know and look for those levels of conflict. Then go back to your own stories. And if you have the Fit Presenter Kit, which is free on the website, you look at the 4 different types of stories. One story when you won, one story when you failed, one story when you were the victim, somebody wronged you, and one story where you learned from somebody else. In all those stories, you have opportunity for initial danger and then the emotional conflict. You'll know it. How will you know when you've hit all those? When you're writing in your notebook and you start to, you throw that pen down, you want to break something. You know you've hit that. You hit that emotional conflict. Keep rehearsing until it's not emotional for you anymore. Until you present it. Then your audience will remind you what it feels like. I recommend get pen to paper, find those levels of conflict, and your stories will become their stories. They'll mean something to your audience. They'll repeat back to you and how your story reached out to them. And then you can connect to them on any idea you want to share with them.